In today's video, I want to speak about the huge opportunities that New World has in terms of lore. As we know, a lot of people are criticizing the game for different things. Things like, oh, there's no endgame, or, like the PvP is all over the place, and at the beginning it was the whole thing about queues and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we're playing an MMORPG. One of the key components of an MMORPG is very interesting, very well put together, very magical, sort of fantastic, epic world and epic narrative attached to it. One of the few exceptions that I can think about is RuneScape, which has been an amazing MMO which appeals to a lot of people, and a lot of people are comparing actually New World to RuneScape. But if you think about the MMORPG, which is World of Warcraft, of course there were MMORPGs for Warcraft like EverQuest, or another title that some fine gentleman wearing a fedora is gonna come forward with. But in any case, the MMORPG, of course, World of Warcraft, that's the one who made the blockbuster, that's the one who made the news and went mainstream and everybody talked about it, and it was so rich in lore, so rich in a story and narrative, not in the way that most people think, because a lot of people, if you'd ask them, they would say, I never knew anything about the lore about World of Warcraft, I just played to get big DPS or play my hunter and just get pets and whatever, and that's fine. But what World of Warcraft did so well is that its story, its narrative, its elements were environmental, were all over the place, would get to you subconsciously. It was about living in this fantasy realm of the Lord of the Rings, just borrowing from so many mythologies, so many legends, so many stories around ancient philosophies and whatnot, which you didn't even realize you were tackling into. It was all in the dungeons, it was all in the little stories, the dwarves, the whatever, the elves, etc, etc, etc. Only if you paid attention you would have picked it up. And the further MMOs that came after, a lot of them didn't have this, so this is why World of Warcraft stayed on top. It had like amazing gameplay with a very rich story in between. Even the Lord of the Rings MMO wasn't as good as World of Warcraft, because World of Warcraft had a very detailed design in terms of its archetypes, in the profiles of the classes, in the little narratives that were attached to them, the quests that made the classes what they were, and people felt so attracted to that because it tickled something that is within the human psyche, and is the reason why before World of Warcraft and before MMOs and before stories on the Renaissance, there were epic narratives in ancient Greece and whatnot. So this is something that is very, very important, and a lot of people think that lore is not important for an MMO, but it is the basis of an MMO. An MMO is an epic narrative. An MMORPG mainly. You can have these modern. People say something sometimes when I speak about this, they counter argument with the idea of, oh, MMO only means that there's a lot of people, it's multiplayer, whatever. So if you think in those terms, then even Fortnite is an MMO, and it's just not the case. It's the MMORPG. It's a huge world, mainly in the medieval epic fantasy, which even Final Fantasy XIV tried to approach, just creating this medieval sort of fantasy, which is technological in a sense in that world. But in any case, it's the epic medieval fantasy. Why is it medieval? Why is it this romantic medieval fantasy? Because during the medieval periods there was all this evolution of new ideas, new concepts, new themes that came upon, because due to the syncretism of Christianity from the early ages and the pagan European tradition. So that Christianity and those pagan traditions, those tales, those folk tales, the fairy tales, all of that sort of got together, and along with some political and social things that were occurring at the time, there was, a lot of people think that the Middle Ages were the Dark Ages, where everything was like very, very bleak, to say something, to put a word to it, There was no development in art, culture, philosophy, etc. Everything was just stuck on very dogmatic beliefs, but that's not the case. In reality, the medieval period, there was a huge development in culture, in philosophy, in politics, literature. That time is where the first romantic stories came about, and all this literature about the knight emerged, as opposed to the warrior. And the idea of knights and damsels, and all of this literature evolved, all of these new ideas of looking at the world, the kingdoms merged, the kingdoms began to form together, and it was that syncretism between Christianity and the ancient folk tales, the ancient pagan tradition, which sort of merged. And the most important thing why we look at the medieval period as this romanticized period is because they still sort of believed in magic. Now, magic was something that was denied by the current Christianity that was in the age. But then you get all these stories about these magicians who would hide in their mage towers or whatnot. These evil sorcerers who would go into the forests at night, and the dragon who was also lurking around the kingdoms or whatever. So looking into this idea of magic, that's where later on in the 1800s, right after the Renaissance, then it came the Renaissance brought intellectualism and all these developments in science and whatnot. But then after that, in the 1800s, people started to look back at the medieval period when people believed in magic and all this nonsense, and they started to write all these novels and all these these fictional tales about the medieval periods, and then they romanticized the medieval periods. Then we got Tolkien, we got all these tales of a romanticized medieval period which believed in magic, which believed in dragons and knights and all these things, and that's where we set our MMORPGs. So it is about the magic. One of the issues with New World is that there's magic is barely there, it's barely explained. This is why fantasy lore is important, and this is why it's mostly set on the medieval period. So no, you cannot have an MMORPG without RPG elements, without this huge epic world where there's a huge threat going on, and where the reason why I play these games and why I make these videos and why I'm just focused on this channel a little bit, trying to get things going, is because I like the way that these fantasies in MMOs try to explain their world around them, try to explain what is the foundation, the creation of the world, the creation of souls, what is a soul, what is life and death, and all of these games go into the concept of life and death and the creation of the universe. If you think of World of Warcraft and the Titans and the theme of the light, of course, which is amazing, and then you think about, it's not an MMO, but this is the best RPG that has ever existed to date, or at least the most known, Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind. They explain a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses and just stories about how creation happened. And we have the huge upcoming MMO, Ashes of Creation. What probably is the game gonna be about? The lore. It's about the ashes of creation, about how everything was created. So in these MMORPGs, people are finding ways and expression, or they look into how did worlds come about. What is the story of creation of these worlds? Where does magic come from? Like, people want magic, people want something more than the mundane experience. Now, what I do in this channel is that I've been doing this research for more than 10 years probably into theology, philosophy, and ancient mythologies and whatsoever, along with new scientific theories that are saying that perhaps these people weren't so crazy, and perhaps magic is something that we still don't understand yet. We're beginning to understand it, so this is why I'm interested in this, on all these things. So yeah, you do need a strong narrative, and a lot of people are gonna be looking for it either consciously or subconsciously. So New World has a lot of potential potential and a lot of little themes where it can borrow from and create some amazing lore. Interestingly enough, New World is not based in the medieval period. It's based on the post-medieval period. It's based on what is called the quote-unquote Age of Exploration, which is when the colonizers went to the Americas and they quote-unquote discovered America, which it wasn't discovered because there were people already living in America, Native Americans of course. And there's these theories that the Vikings came first, and in any case, it's based on this age of exploration where the colonizers came to America. But the Eternum is not America. Eternum is a weird, strange island, which is probably on the Atlantic, like in between the Americas and Europe. One of the reasons why the game probably was set in this time period is because the game was supposed to be a survival game. So I don't know, they thought it was interesting to do the colonial thing, but somehow it turned into an MMORPG. So now we have an MMORPG based on the age of exploration. This is a new thing. It's whole new things to work with. No longer does it have to be close to dragons and dungeons. You know, people still call them dungeons. They're like, oh, there are no dungeons in New World. Why should there be any dungeons in New World? In the Age of Exploration, there weren't dungeons because they weren't in the area where dungeons existed, in the castles in ancient Europe. They are in some sort of strange island. Why should there be any quote-unquote dungeons? And you know, that's what I'm saying. I've been doing this criticism on my Facebook little clips where I say, like, why are people so stuck in like World of Warcraft? They want everything to be World of Warcraft. Of course, they want the new World of Warcraft, the new world. But in any case, this is not it. It's based on the Age of Exploration, and the thematic is based upon a real-life myth on the Fountain of Youth. So there was a Spanish conquistador, I cannot remember the name, I think Ponce de Leon, something like that, which he wanted to. He was looking for, there were the myths around him, where he was looking in one of these islands found in the Americas called the Fountain of Youth. There was the myth that there was a place where people would drink from some water or bathe in some water and achieve eternal life. Now, eternal life is a theme that is perennial to the MMORPG. This idea of becoming the Lich, becoming this mage in a tower who is looking to, become immortal. This immortality. This is even in Final Fantasy. I recently made a video about this. They try to explain how the Ascians, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully, how do they achieve immortality, and they work with the walls of how there's a world of non-physical and the physical and whatsoever, so on and so forth. But it seems that New World is working with this idea of the Fountain of Youth. Now, what is this Fountain of Youth that they are working with? It is their so very interesting and so very mysterious thing called Azoth. Now, Azoth is not something that they just came up with, something that they pulled out of their sleeve, like the 100+ servers they pulled out whenever they had the whole queue system issues. No, Azoth is an actual word, an actual concept, an actual theme. Azoth was believed to be a substance in alchemy. Now, when we say alchemy, a lot of people think that alchemy is just based on these video games and Skyrim and whatnot. You think that alchemy is just like making potions of health or for man or whatever. Alchemy in the ancient medieval period and even before was something having to do with more philosophical items. Not only about creating. Yes, they did create potions. They did have an interest in medicine, but they also wanted to achieve perfection in soul, mind, and body. They wanted to. It was very philosophical. It was very occultist. It was trying to find the truth about the universe, the truth about all these occult hidden items in the world. And of course, they were trying to create a potion for immortality. That's one of the key items of This is why I get all riled up when I see these ideas of immortality in these video games, because this is what the alchemists wanted to create. This is the Philosopher's Stone. This is the holy grail of IRL occultism, IRL, ancient theories and whatnot, and of our MMORPGs. People think it's just all fantasy, it all came out. No, they were people who were actually trying to figure these things out and trying to find, the roots, the root creation of the universe or universes. But in any case, so Azoth was a component, was believed to be this mist, this item in alchemy that would help create this elixir of immortality, quote unquote. Okay, so to further understand what Azoth is, I'm gonna read from some of the authors and some of the theories from these ancient alchemists. So, now what I'm gonna say is something that you should pay attention to because you're listening to it in a video game forum, in a video game channel, but this is the truth about who you are. This is the truth about what everything is, and this is the ultimate truth. So it behooves you to pay attention to this and maybe do your own research. That's what I want for people to do with this channel, is for them to catch these little words and catch these little themes that I sometimes speak about, that most people might think that is just crazy talk and just nonsense and just what they call retconning or whatever. But no, I've been doing this research for more than 10 years. I know what I'm talking about. They know what they're talking about. So yeah, you should pay attention to this. So Azoth, yes, indeed, it was believed to be some sort of a physical thing, just substance, and you can call it mist, you can call it vapor, you can call it whatever it is. But as I've been saying, alchemy is not only about the plant, it's not only about the physical item, it's about the metaphysical aspect of it. It's about philosophy, it's about more, it's this, I think the best word is that, metaphysical. So Azoth is related to something called the Ein Sof, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's the ultimate substance in Kabbalah. Kabbalah is ancient Hebrew, it's the ancient Hebrew occultism branch. So in Kabbalah, it is understood, this concept of Ein Sof, it is understood as God prior to any self-manifestation in the production of any spiritual realm. So this is before physical and before spiritual. So the physical came after the spiritual realm. So before all of that, the first mind, the first motor that is looked upon by philosophy and by logic and by all these branches is that vapor, is that first essence. It's before Anu and Padme in the Elder Scrolls lore. Anu and Padme, the first two powers that were just cosmic beings, just creating something in the push and pull of good and evil, or whatever you may want to call it. Before that is this Ein Sof. It is the origin of the Or Ein Sof, the quote-unquote infinite light of paradoxical divine self-knowledge. Now, when these ancient occultists were speaking about the infinite light, they have their writings and whatnot. This is the light. This is the light. This is the light. Now, when you go into Wikipedia and when you try to research all of this, they say things like, oh, the idea of the quote-unquote light was a metaphor, was a way in which they represented divinity. But as I've been saying, the new research on this is not a metaphor. It is actual light. This is what some people are reporting when they die and they are brought back to life with our current medicine. But in any case, that is more in terms of the IRL research. But this is where all these mythologies come from. So it's before that. It's this essence. Now, to further understand a little bit of what Azoth is, we're starting to see that Azoth might be more than a little currency in a video game. It's in the words of Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall was an occultist, a mystic, an esoteric man who wrote a book named The Hidden Teachings of All Ages. Now, I do a lot of real research on Manly P. Hall. He had some amazing ideas, amazing theories, and there are many other contemporary authors to Manly P. Hall, which were writing and were talking about all these things. And now, as a side note, in between the whole Azoth thing, I want to say New World has all the opportunity to work with these theosophical theories, with the Freemasonry. Manly P. Hall became a Mason eventually, and the Rosicrucians, all these occult societies which were trying to explore alchemy, explore all of this. New World can work with all of that because it's contemporary. This happened right after the age of exploration. Now, so this Manly P. Hall wrote about Azoth regarding and related to this Ein Sof that I just spoke about. He said, the universe is surrounded by the sphere of light or stars. Beyond that sphere is Shamayim. Shamayim, this is a Hebrew word. This is the Hebrew word for heaven, who is the divine fiery water, the first outflow of the word of God, the flaming river pouring from the presence of eternal mind. Shamayim, who is this fiery androgen, divides. His fire becomes solar fire and his water becomes lunar water. In our universe, Shamayim is the universal Mercury or Azoth, the measureless spirit of life. There we go. So that Azoth is much more than a substance. It seems to be the substance. And now we start to understand the Shamayim, this Ein Sof, this before anything, who becomes two. Now it becomes this fiery androgen, and this becomes solar fire and lunar water, Anu and Padme. This is the Elder Scrolls lore, like this duality that I've been speaking about on and on and on. I spoke about this in my previous video on Final Fantasy. I will link it somewhere on the screen right now. In any case, this is how evil was created. So there's a lot of early mythologies worked upon here. So there's also the mention of Mercury. Mercury, this element, this liquid metal. Now, Mercury used to be something which was thought to be this very important part of creation. Now, it goes on. Manly P. Hall keeps saying that original spiritual fiery water comes through Edom, which is vapor in Hebrew, and pours itself into the four main rivers of the four elements. This comprises the river of living water, the Azoth, or fiery mercurial essence that flows out from the throne of God and Lamb. In this Edom, this vaporous essence or mist is the first or spiritual earth, the incomprehensible and intangible dust out of which God formed Adam, Kadmon, the spiritual body of man, which must become fully revealed through time. So Azoth has deep creationist theories surrounding it, and it goes deep beyond the ancient mythologies, the ancient occultism, the ancient whatsoever. And instead of a simple currency in a quite grindy game with quote-unquote uninspired quests, this whole thing about Azoth could be one of the best foundations for any lore in an MMORPG. Now, in other I will say, like, okay, this is all fantasy. I will explain a little bit more about Azoth. But in other alchemical treatises, it says the Azoth is believed to be the animating energy, spiritus animatus, of the body, and the inspiration and enthusiasm that moves the mind. The Azoth is believed to be the mysterious evolutionary force responsible for the drive towards physical and spiritual perfection. As I said, one of the key objectives of actual alchemy. Thus, the concept of the Azoth is analogous to the light of nature or mind of God. Azoth, as I've been saying, could even precede Anu and Padme, this dualism, and become the singularity that I spoke about in this on that Final Fantasy video that I made. The singularity that comes before the physical realm, comes before everything, comes before the Or Ein, Azoth, as I said, this quote-unquote infinite light. It comes before the light. It's the essence of creation, as I said. We're waiting for that new MMORPG named Ashes of Creation. What is it gonna be about? Well, it's all about the same thing. We're trying to explain the nature of the universe. And now, of course, this is just me nerding out. This is just fantasies, women saying, so on and so forth. What I do in this channel is I try to look into all of these themes and just sort of equate them to real theories, real philosophy, and real stuff. Now, you might say, all of this is just nonsense. Like, who cares about this? Why should we put so much focus into what this stupid currency, which shouldn't be capped at 1,000, should be? Well, this new research on quantum physics, as I've been saying, I mentioned it in one of the clips I did during the stream. Quantum physics is something that just blew the mind of researchers, of philosophers, of these scientists, including Albert Einstein, who were trying to figure out the mechanics of the universe. So there's this theory in real life that there is such a thing, not as an essence, not as a mere component, not as anything like that, but more like a metaphysical sort of unifying field that puts everything together. This field, the quote-unquote, the unified field of consciousness. This is what the light is. This is what the Force is in Star Wars. You know, you see our science fiction dealing with our medieval epic fantasies. This is what Ether in Final Fantasy is. This non-physical realm, this non-physical that is just uniting everything in the physical. This is the theories of Plato, of the worlds of forms and the worlds of the ideal. All of this just comes together, trying to form out the real theories that we have, that people are currently working on, especially after the quantum physics and our MMORPG theories. Now, this is why I'm saying, this is why I'm making such a big deal on why is it so important to have a good narrative in an MMORPG. Because a lot of people sometimes come to the realization, I'm spending what? 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 hours per day. People quit their jobs for 2 weeks to play this game. Like on 24/7, like as long as they can. Why do you do all of this? People suddenly are waking up thinking, oh, why am I just grinding this for hours upon hours upon hours? What is the value that all of this has for me as a human being? Of course, it's relaxing, it's fun, you get to play with your friends, you get to smack things with a big hammer or whatsoever, but there could be such utility and such a way to further evolve as a human being by playing these video games if we put a little bit more effort into understanding what the lore about these video games is. In any case, I think New World has a very strong potential, very strong foundation, and I hope they can understand that they need this strong foundation to keep working on their MMORPG, which you know, if they want to add some more PvE, which is one of the main complaints, they need this strong lore so they can make raids about whatever is preventing this Azoth to flow freely through creation or whatever. So there it ties into the corruption. So of course there's corruption of this Azoth, this Anu Padme. There's this evil force which tries to corrupt everything and which is opposite to the light, because in order for the light to exist in the first place, as I spoke on that Final Fantasy video where I spoke where those evil comes from, and I also made a World of Warcraft video where I speak about the Maw. Why does the Maw exist? Why does all of this exist? The same thing. It's the same story told over and over and over. But the more MMORPGs we get with the same story, the more we can understand, the more we can Azoth. We didn't know Azoth before New World. A lot of people, did you know, this is something lost in the annals of alchemy. And now with these MMORPGs, suddenly people are talking about Azoth. What is Azoth? Nobody knows. It's a currency that is capped at 1000. There could be so much more said and studied and understood with a little grinding game about the reality of the universe. If you would like to know more about the lore surrounding these fantasy narratives and how they perhaps connect to real-life theories and philosophies, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, as I will try to find these connections and explore the possibilities that these lores can provide. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.